At this time, I am pleased to introduce our keynote speaker, Father Stephen Imbarrato is known by many as the protest priest. Being a post-abortive man turned pro-life activist, he committed to Jesus that if he ever gave him opportunities to sacrifice for his little ones, he would not shrink from that call, the way he did in the 1970s when he let his Eve down, costing the lives of his two babies, Thomas and Mary. This commitment led him to the seminary and eventually the priesthood, as well as multiple arrests and jail time through his work with Red Rose Rescue. Father Stephen sees legalized abortion as government-sanctioned, government-protected, and government-funded daily mass murder of preborn children, and believes that we can only abolish abortion by recognizing constitutional personhood at conception. He developed the idea of a Personhood Proclamation presidential executive order and helped deliver a 10,000 signature petition for the executive order to President Trump in January 2018. Today, Father Stephen Imbarrato is a retired priest of the Archdiocese of Santa Fe, New Mexico, and lives full-time in Florida. He is co-founder of the National Men's March to Abolish Abortion and Rally for Personhood. Father Stephen can still be seen periodically on EWTN, where he has preached many times over the years and co-hosted the Defending Life show for 5 seasons. He currently co-hosts The Simple Truth Fridays with Father with Jim Havens on Station of the Cross Radio and celebrates a live stream daily Mass as well as a daily live stream broadcast of prayer and commentary seen by thousands of people worldwide. I first saw Father Stephen speak at the International Gift of Life Walk in New York City, sponsored by Personhood Education New York. Subsequently, not long after I moved to Florida, we crossed paths again and have collaborated on various pro-life initiatives, including the Men's March, 40 Days for Life, the Heartbeat Protection Act in Florida, and the Vote No on Amendment 4 campaign. I have developed a deep respect and admiration for Father Stephen's absolute commitment to the right to life, his knowledge and insight, and his fearlessness in speaking the truth to power. Please join me in welcoming our keynote speaker, the protest priest, Father Stephen Imbarrato.
Thank you, Gerald. Thank you so much. Wow, Gerald, I know I didn't write that introduction. You did, so thank you very much. It's so good to be back in New York. I am actually a New York guy, as you can tell by my twang. I'm retired living in Florida now, but I was born in Upper Manhattan. Grew first 2 years of my life in the Bronx, grew up in Bergen County, went to Manhattan College, and so it's good to be back. As a matter of fact, I stopped to see if Manhattan College had changed at all on the way up this morning. Beautiful ride across the GWB. And what I call the Spike and Dival, right? You know that Spike and Dival bridge used to be 10 cents when I was going to Manhattan College. And a buddy of mine, when it went up to a quarter, refused to cross the bridge, and we get off Dyckman Street and go down to Broadway, all right, and go up to Manhattan College on Broadway. So I'm going to let him know that it's $8 if you don't have Easy Pass now. Look, it's really good to be here. I only have about 15, 20 minutes, and so I want to jam it in as much as possible. Now, I handed out a very simple card to everyone that has the website that I'm going to talk about this morning, rallyforpersonhood.com. My personal cards with all my contact information. I pride myself in being a very accessible priest. I have my address on my card. I've been handing this out for years and years and years. All my contact information. So far, nobody has showed up at my house unannounced. our Lord has protected me. My cards are on the back table, and then I handed out the cards for Rally for Personhood, and that's basically what I'm going to talk about for a few minutes this morning. So this website, Rally for Personhood, really is an action website. And I just want to take a few minutes to tell you where we are at this point in time. In my mind, we are in a 21st century version of post-Dred Scott, pre-Civil War America. 1858, Lincoln-Douglas debate. Lincoln, a house divided cannot stand. We are at that moment. And indeed, the overturning of Roe versus Wade by Dobbs, which we hear now all the time. How many people hear now? Dobbs sent this issue back to the states and to the people where it belongs. Now, that's what President Trump is talking about all the time. We hear Republicans talk about it all the time. We hear the pro-life leadership talk about it all the time, right? That now abortion is back in the states where it belongs, and it's in the hands of the people. How many people have heard that? Right? Exactly. Well, that's a lie. That's a lie. It's an absolute lie. The overturning of Roe versus Wade did expose the lie that there was ever a constitutional right to abortion. There never was. But indeed, your right to life, my right to life, every person's right to life, the inalienable right to life that cannot be taken from us without due process and guarantees us equal protection under the law, is not predicated upon or derived from the will of the people or any state government. As a matter of fact, no government. And the only question remaining, and it's a question today, although it was not a question prior to the 14th Amendment, judicial history in the United States always held that from the moment life was detected in the womb, life would be protected in the womb. When the 14th Amendment was passed in this country, that was absolutely the prevailing legal and judicial thought. Once life is protected in the womb, once life is detected in the womb, life is protected. Let me read the pertinent words from the 14th Amendment so you understand exactly what I'm talking about. And I have it memorized. I don't know why I have to read it, but I guess reading it makes it look official, right? No state shall make or enforce nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor deny any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the law. So let's think about that for a second. And again, I am giving you my thoughts on this subject, but they're not my thoughts. We're talking about constitutional scholars like Robert George, Josh Craddock, Hadley Arks, John Finnis, who believe exactly the same thing, except they're not activists. They're academia, so they're kind of like a little bit shy getting out into the world and proclaiming this. So our Lord basically has told me, hey, you're retired, you got nothing else to do. You're going to go out and you're going to try and create this national debate. Me and a few other people create this national debate. Now, let me ask you this. Everyone here is a human person, a constitutional person in the United States. Every member of the Supreme Court, all 9 members, are constitutional persons. Simple question for the Supreme Court. In the 14th Amendment, the part that I just read, when the word person is used, At what moment did we become constitutional persons? At what moment did we receive the rights guaranteed in the 14th Amendment? Our inalienable right to life endowed by our Creator that can't be taken away without due process, nor can we be denied equal protection of the law. At what moment? It's a simple question that needs to be asked of the Supreme Court of the United States. We want you to answer one simple question. Answer that question. And of course, everyone here knows what the answer is. It can only be the moment of conception. So then what is the reality that we exist in today? Our preborn brothers and sisters are being denied their constitutional rights. They are now a constitutionally excluded class. They were before Roe versus Wade, or from Roe versus Wade till now. And now that Dobbs has overturned Roe versus Wade, they remain an excluded constitutional class. And for the first time in our history, we are mass murdering an excluded class. Now, this cannot go on. Now, I just posted, actually, in an hour, it'll premiere, all right, our radio show from yesterday, Jim Havens and I, The Simple Truth, Fridays with Father. And again, you can access my YouTube channel by going to my card. You can find, just go to Google and put Protest Priest and my channel will come up. And we covered this every single Friday, this whole idea of constitutional personhood to abolish abortion. But yesterday in the show, I talked about 3 levels of consciousness based on the mood that I'm in regards to the Supreme Court. Because there's a lot of people who believe that we should not exert our influence on the Supreme Court, that they should be politically independent. What, culturally independent? Right? Did they just call balls and strikes? Nonsense. They've always been arbiters of the Constitution as it's reflected in the culture. Dred Scott decision, perfect example. Roe versus Wade, perfect example. If you saw the movie, perfect example. Well, why not now? Why not now? If I saw a Supreme Court justice today, if I was in a good mood, I'd ask them the simple question that I just asked all of you. Hey, you're a constitutional person, I'm a constitutional person. When did we obtain the constitutional rights guaranteed us in the 14th Amendment? If I was in a good mood. If I was kind of like in between, I'd say, look, I demand you answer that question. I demand that you recognize constitutional person from the moment of conception. Recognize that we have an excluded constitutional class and we're mass murdering them. If I was in a bad mood, an ornery mood, which I am quite often, I'd say, you know what, Supreme Court Justice, whoever you are, when you ruled on Dobbs and overturned Roe versus Wade, what in essence you did is you allowed the continuation of this excluded class, the preborn. You continued to deny their constitutional rights, and you've continued to allow them to be mass murdered. The blood of every single baby in this country that's murdered by abortion is on the hands of the Supreme Court. On the hands of even people like Alito and Thomas. But you know what? They know it. They know it. So let me give you a little backstory. This is Father Imbarrato's opinion on how, you guys remember the leak? The big leak, the Supreme Court leak, 6 weeks before they officially overturned Roe versus Wade. First time in history, right? Draft of a decision was leaked. Here's how I think it came down. Alito goes to Justice Thomas and says, And you can decide for yourself whether this makes sense or not. Because you remember, they never discovered who leaked it. All right, so you can decide for yourself whether this makes sense. Alito goes to Thomas and says, I want to overturn Roe versus Wade using Dobbs. And Thomas says, well, we should be using Dobbs to abolish abortion, all right, because constitutional personhood is from the moment of conception. Well, yeah, I know that, but do we have enough votes here? They go to Amy Barrett, and Amy Barrett says, hey, I'm on board. Now, you're talking about 3 Catholics here, right? 3 supposedly devout Catholics. 2270 in the Catechism. And if you go to the website, rallyforpersonhood.com, you'll have right next a video, the 14th Amendment and 2270 in the Catechism, because interestingly enough, the Catechism 2270 answers for the Supreme Court, most of them Catholic, the question that I want them to answer. Human life begins at conception, human personhood begins at conception. It's always been that way. So Amy Barrett says, look, you got the votes, I'm on board. They go to Kavanaugh. Kavanaugh gets really, really nervous. She's like, well, I don't know about that. Right? Gorsuch says, you get the votes, I'm on board. So they go to Justice Roberts. And of course, it's the Roberts Court. And you know, it's his legacy, Roberts Court. He freaks out. He's like, well, it'll start a civil war. If we use Dobbs to overturn Roe versus Wade and abolish abortion, it'll start a civil war. We can't do that, and I'll prove it to you. So he leaks it. And what happens? Well, they show up in front of their houses, threaten to kill them, riots all over the country. And Roberts says, see, I told you. But I'll tell you what we'll do. Instead of going from overturning Roe versus Wade to abolishing abortion, how about we take one incremental step? And we'll put it out there, and hopefully it'll create a national debate, a national discussion. And in that national debate, in that national discussion, the people will see that we have a constitutional crisis that needs to be dealt with, an excluded class that needs to be recognized, and then we can rule on ending the mass murder. So they did what they did. What happened? What happened? Nothing. Nothing. Mainstream corporate pro-life movement doesn't understand the moment in time we're in. Catholic Church doesn't understand the moment. The Protestants don't understand. The Republicans don't understand. The conservatives don't understand. Nothing. Nothing happened. Now, what's the difference between where we are now and 1858 post-Dred Scott pre-Civil War America? There are some differences. The first difference is that the issue back then was slavery, right? Black slaves were the excluded class. Now the babies are the excluded class. Back then, there was a national debate going on in the country. Everyone talked about slavery. If you took U.S. history, you know darn well. For decades, slavery was the focal point. Not only Dred Scott, the Missouri Compromise, I mean everything was focused on slavery. And finally, the Civil War, in anticipation, after Lincoln got elected, that he would free the slaves. The South didn't wait, and they started the Civil War. But the other difference, and it's a significant difference between then and now, they didn't have the 14th Amendment, and we do. And we do. And why we're not standing on the 14th Amendment, why we're not screaming at the top of our lungs, what about the rights of the babies? What about the babies? And you don't hear that. If the mainstream corporate pro-life movement united and focused on that simple thing, what about the babies? What about the rights of the babies? This is a constitutional crisis. It's not a states' rights issue. Every one of these these referendums, 4 down in Florida where Gerald and I live, 1 here in New York, the 7 that we've already lost, and the 8 that are in the process of going are unconstitutional. Because no state, all right, I read you the 14th Amendment. No state has the right to allow a group of persons in their state to vote on whether another group of persons in their state can be murdered. Right? I mean, you don't need to be a constitutional scholar to figure this out. But the silence is deafening. And so, as a retired priest, I've been dedicating myself to this one singular issue, to try and create this national debate, this national discussion, this national outcry. At whatever level you want to project it to the Supreme Court, that the blood of every one of these babies is on your hands, or we demand you recognize constitutional personhood from the moment of conception, or just tell us when we obtained equal protection under the law. Every single person in this room, every person in the country, when did we obtain the right of equal protection under the law? When? Just answer that question. Simple question. And of course, if they say from the moment of conception, it's over. It's over. Now I'm going to end with this. You might say, well, you know, Father, why the Supreme Court has refused to take a personhood case? Right? They had the Rhode Island case, they refused to take it. And there's a lot of potential cases. Remember, we don't need an amendment. We don't need any federal legislation. We need one court case. One court case that the Supreme Court will take to recognize constitutional personhood from the moment of conception. Just one case. Why won't they take it, Father? Why won't they? Because there's no demand for it. They're going to risk a civil war. They're going to risk turning the country upside down. Morally, they should. And I bet you some of them aren't sleeping at night over this issue because they know exactly what I said about the blood being on their hands. But once we create the national outcry, they will answer the simple question that I presented to them. And of course, this is so basic. I mean, when you think about it, in the state of Texas, a woman, a pregnant woman, her baby in the womb has full constitutional rights. That baby in the mother's womb crosses the border into New Mexico, that baby has no rights. In Illinois, in Missouri, the baby, St. Louis baby, in the mother's womb, full constitutional rights. They drive over the bridge into southern Illinois. That baby has no constitutional rights. It's a jurisdictional issue. It's a federal issue. There's many, many cases percolating out there that the Supreme Court could take, and we need to create a situation where not only they take it, but they answer the simple question or acquiesce to our demand or at least wash their hands of the blood. So, how can you help? Well, that's where rallyforpersonhood.com comes in. I gave you the card. I am at your disposal. It only took me 15 minutes to lay this out in a way that everybody can understand. We need everyone talking about this. And everything you need to internalize this as I've internalized it. And I'm not a lawyer, I'm not a constitutional scholar, I'm a priest. Retired priest. And I've internalized it. There's not a question I can't answer. And there's not a perspective on this that I can't give a full, rational, and reasonable explanation to. And so can you. Rallyforpersonhood.com. There's a list of things that each of you can do. Very simple, not time-consuming. Something as simple as there's a petition there that we want to supply to the Supreme Court through a friend of the court, Hadley Arcus, asking them to answer that simple question. Or you can just, as Gerald invited me, Tara invited me, and thank you, Gerald and Tara, invited me to come here today to talk to you what I do and how I spend my time. I had to travel 1,000 miles to get here, all right, but I can click a switch on my computer and zoom into your house or zoom into your ministry meeting or zoom into your group meeting and give the 15 minutes over Zoom and orient everybody. Would you be willing to have a little house meeting or let me zoom into your ministry meeting or your little group meeting? And we'll do a little interactive 15, 20 minutes, half hour, then you can discuss it. Everything you need is at rallyforpersonhood.com. Maybe you'll get to the point where you start holding rallies. I co-founded the Men's March to Abolish Abortion with Jim Havens and the Rally for Personhood. We're going to be up in Boston. We were in Albany last year. We do these around the country where we talk about exactly what I'm talking about to you today. There are many, many things you can do. They're all at rallyforpersonhood.com. And that's all I'm asking you to do. That's why, if you notice, the card I handed out just says Constitutional Personhood from Conception, rallyforpersonhood.com. For questions or schedule a Zoom meeting free of charge. I work cheap. Because Jesus told me, you work cheap. And my email address. Just email me. We'll set up a date, and that's it. I mean, I'm a 30-year pro-life activist. As Gerald said, I've been post-abortion healing because I'm post-abortive. Started 2 pregnancy resource centers. Been arrested 5 times. I mean, the breadth and depth of the pro-life movement I've been involved with for 30 years. Sidewalk counseling, my On the Road for Life ministry, etc. But I wiped everything else off the calendar. Once this election comes in November and we defeat 4 in Florida, and hopefully you'll defeat 1 here in New York, even though you still have a mess here in New York. But again, it's all unconstitutional, right? I wiped my table clean, and this is what I want to do because this is what our Lord is calling me to do. We need to have our little brothers and sisters in the womb, God's babies, recognized as constitutional persons. This is a constitutional issue. It's a moral issue. And it needs to be our issue, my brothers and sisters in Christ. This is the moment in time that our Lord has brought us, and everyone else can ignore it, but that does not at all remove our responsibility to do what we need to do at this moment. Recognize constitutional person from the moment of conception, and finally, one court case away from abolishing this horror once and for all. God bless you.
Father Stephen, on behalf of Westchester Putnam Right to Life Committee, we have a token of appreciation for you and your great pro-life work and a wonderful presentation.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you. Oh, I still have chills from that presentation. Wonderful.
I can do another hour.